5 o'clock. Welcome everyone to our board meeting, and as the first order of business, I would like to invite the Washington students to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Who pledge allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I will hear a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I'll second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes, and first order of business is a presentation from the Washington Elementary students. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Tasha Hamer. I'm the principal of Washington Elementary. I'm honored to be here tonight with a wonderful group of fifth graders who are going to share with all of you how every Washington Cougar starts their day. These fifth graders are very instrumental in the beginning of the day, and they are going to tell you all about it. But first, I'd like my team to introduce themselves.
My name is Luke Huntsberger.
I'm Claire Presta.
My name is Fiona Naples. I'm Nina Carden. I'm Jane Nisa.
And I'm Trevor Taddock.
Welcome.
All Washington Cougars start their day with a morning meeting. In a morning meeting, we learn about each other and figure out what our day is going to look like.
Morning meeting has a set structure. First, we greet each other with an elbow bump. Then we'll share certain topics. Then we'll either have an activity or game. Then our teacher will go over our daily schedule. Then we'll watch the Career Connection.
We would like to invite the board members to come in a circle and stand for a morning meeting. Normally we would sit, but tonight we're going to stand.
Begin with you guys? Sure. Okay. Oh, all right.
This morning meeting starts with a greet. In a greeting, we say each other's first names and good morning. We make eye contact, and we either pass something along or do a handshake. Tonight we will be using an elbow bump. Good evening, Claire.
Good evening, Luke. Good evening, Fiona.
Good evening, Claire. Good evening, Nina.
Good evening, Fiona. Good evening, Tanya. Good evening, Tanya. Good evening, Trevor.
Good evening, Daniel. Good evening, Burley.
Good evening, Jerry. Good evening.
Good evening, Pearlie. Good evening, Lonnie.
Good evening, Tasha. Good evening, Geraldine.
Good evening, Lonnie. Good evening, Becky.
Good evening, Geraldine. Good evening, Cougar Luke.
Good evening, Dr. Meyer.
The next morning meeting is sharing. We share about a bunch of different topics, like our weekend or important things that happened to us. Tonight we're going to share about our favorite thing about sampling. We invite you guys to share, but if you don't want to, you can pass.
One of my favorite things about Sandpoint is the lake.
One of my favorite things about Sandpoint is the scenery.
I like the wildlife in the lake.
Mine's the lake and the mountain.
I love panhandle pine coffee.
I like the environment.
I like our community and our sports programs.
I like that I was a Sandpoint Bulldog.
I love Washington Elementary.
I love the people.
I was going to say, I love all the friends.
I love the students. The next part of morning meeting is the activity or game. Tonight we'll be playing a game called 1 to 10, which is where someone starts and says 1 or 2, and each time you add 1 or 2 to the last number said. If you say 10, you sit down and you're out. There's no 11, 12, etc. We would like to show you a
Good
round
idea.
of 1 to 10.
Dry run.
1,
3,
5, 7.
9. Daniel will be out. Would you guys, would the board members, would the board members like to play a round of 1 to 10 with us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe just one round. We won't have time to make everybody sit down.
4.
We'll run through it
First
once.
person out loses.
5, 6,
7.
9.
Oh. Okay, well, we had a good sample.
Bye, Farley.
And then the last part of morning meeting is the Career Connection. We would like to show you an episode of the Career Connection.
Can we sit down for that? Okay, great.
Oh, that was fun.
Good morning and welcome to the Career Connection. I'm Luke. And I'm Trevor. It's a great day to be a Cougar.
We pledge our day to Cougar Pride at Washington School. RESPECT is our greatest tool. Respect for self, respect for others, and respect for property. Show Cougar Pride with the great big GER in our community.
Today's date is March 14th, 2023. Our dinner today is macaroni and cheese with diced ham and garlic bread. For the weather report, the forecast for today is 43 degrees and rain. Happy birthday to the following Cougars. Max. Reminders. Calm and quiet when entering the cafeteria. Thanks for watching
And have a great day. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Which we did.
That's awesome.
Very nice.
And there's the words that they.
I saw that, what they were saying.
The Cougar Connection is run completely by Washington 5th graders. There's
Good morning and welcome to the Career.
Just give it once. We'll go to the next slide.
The Cougar Connection is run completely by Washington 5th graders. There's 2 reporters, 1 scriptwriter, 1 filmer, and 1 starter. We report on the date, the weather, the lunch, the Cougar GER, the birthdays, expectations, and reminders.
We also add a special segment. Right now, 5th graders are working on commercials. But in the past, we have also done amazing human tricks, and that's where students would do a trick in front of the camera. Mask Howler, also known as Guess the Teacher with 3 clues. Word of the day, vocab, I spot. Thank you for your time. We are glad to share with you how all Washington students start the day.
Do you board members have any questions for either Ms. Hamer or our team? Donnie?
What's the Cougar GER?
Oh,
Say it for him. Say it. You guys want to say it for him?
Oh, is that what
we pledge our day to Cougar Pride at Washington School. RESPECT is our greatest tool. Respect for self, respect for others, respect for property. Show Cougar Pride with the great big GER in our community.
The GER is give respect for self.
Respect.
Yeah.
So,
Slow learner.
I have a question. Not that same question. But, so there's 6 of you here. How many 5th graders get to participate? The entire class gets to rotate through?
Both classes.
Okay.
Both classes.
That's awesome. So you get a turn and it rotates on to someone. It's not just because you 2 are the best in front of a camera. Well, are there any other questions? I really appreciate you coming and presenting to our board. It gives us a real sense of what happens at your school in the mornings, and Lonnie can say the Cougar GER now. Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Okay. So we have an academic data overview, and I would invite our Director of Teaching and Learning, Andrew Murray, here, and Casey McLaughlin. Hello.
Hi.
It's not because your data's boring.
I know, seriously, they all run.
Well, good evening. Thanks for having us. Just to highlight a little bit of mid-year data. Most of this was pulled in the January, February timeframe in our mid-year check-ins, and we're here to just give a brief report.
Great.
Yeah. So we have goal makers and we have top performers, and so we wanted to point out the state recognizes different top performers and different goal makers in each school. And if you look at this, it's pretty cool. So on the Idaho Standard Achievement Test, we have different schools that have reached top performer status, which is schools that have basically excelled in the top 90th percentile and above. And then schools that are also as goal makers, and that just means they're reaching their goals in the ISATs.
I'll highlight a little bit of elementary data first. I know it's hard to read, but we're showing you the IRI, the Idaho Reading Indicator, that we take in kindergarten through 3rd grade. On the left, for the audience, you'll see September, so how we started the school year, and on the right is January. So I will highlight just that growth in green, or what we refer to as Tier 1 or proficient readers, and also the incredible reduction in red. So students who came in with the biggest struggle, we're seeing a significant shift. So for the crowd, most of those are in the high 60s, some close to 70. Our goal is to be 75% or above by May. And just a highlight for kindergarten, for example, the gain in green was over 15% from fall to January, and the reduction of red was a 14% reduction. So we do believe we're closing the learning gap, and I'd love to highlight that January this year, as compared to January of last year, 3 of these 4 grade levels are ahead of the growth we saw a year ago. So
that's great.
Kudos to the K-3 team, some of whom were in the crowd.
Yeah, that's outstanding. It's a little hard to read, but just going by the actual colors, I can see what you're describing.
Next, we'll share MAP, and for the parents or staff in the crowd, that's the measures of academic progress. It's a growth assessment that we take 2nd grade and then 3rd and up, and it tracks growth from fall to winter. MAP is nationally normed, and they would say that you'd like to see 50% or more of students at a grade level meeting that projection by winter. So here is our reading data, and you can see really close or ahead of that 50% mark. The diamond kind of projects where we want the bar graph to get to, so you can see we're right there. At 5th grade, for example, 51%, but showing on-track growth in reading. Math, not as strong of growth, and you know this has been an area of focus in LPOSD for multiple years. We're working right now with a K-5 team of teachers on a curriculum pilot, hoping to update those materials to address some of what we see here. But you'll see again solid growth anywhere from 40 all the way up to 57% depending on the grade level. And one more shout out, you know the Idaho Standards Achievement Test, or that state test we take in May. Casey highlighted those top performers and goal makers from last spring. That assessment is coming up again. In fact, some of our secondary schools are starting their assessment window soon. We practice for that. We believe that students need to see what that assessment looks like, how questions may be asked, and the state gives practice assessments. Last year, we used those as a district. Over 5,000 separate incidents of logging in and showing students what that looked like. This year we're up over 10,000 practice opportunities presented to students. That could be a teacher logging in just once and showing it, talking to the class. Could be individual students logging in and taking a practice test. So we really, again, would give kudos to our staff, our leaders for exposing students to what that state assessment will look like. So that was a big celebration from January.
Yeah, definitely.
Secondary.
Yeah, and this is really all schools, including elementary as well. But I wanted to point out one of the big initiatives that we had this year was to increase our transparency with all of our curriculum. And I think that we've done a really good job in doing this. This is what we call our unit overviews, and this one is specifically a U.S. government overview. But if you'll notice on this, we have asked all of our teachers from kindergarten through about 8th grade, typically have a set curriculum, where we have relied on teachers to kind of create these overviews for secondary. And so if you look at this is an example of one of the unit overviews, and this one with the U.S. government. You'll see things like what unit is it? Essential questions that we're asking to be identified, the standards that are being addressed in each unit, and then of course, what are they reading? We had a lot of questions from our constituents about, we want to know what kind of supplemental reading, what kind of reading is being brought into the classroom. And now we have the opportunity, which is great, this just became live last Friday, but we put it onto our website so that all patrons and parents can access this. So if Dr. Meyer, so if you go to our website and you navigate to our teaching and learning page, so if over on the side under departments, there is a teaching and learning drop down. And then when we click that teaching and learning, it'll take you, you go to the K-12 curriculum, it'll take you here. It's a little bit of, you gotta find your way a little bit. But once you do that, you can click on either high school or K-8 curriculum overviews. And go ahead and click on either one, it's just fine. And you will get this type of a map that shows you all the different curricular overviews that we currently have. They are still a work in progress a lot because certain schools, like Clark Fork or different schools, are teaching, the teachers teach multiple subject areas. And so they're working on some while they're waiting on some others. And so we've asked them to at least be getting one in by now, and then they'll be working on others. And it's a work in progress. So some you'll notice they've got the first 3 units, and then as they go throughout the school year, they're updating those units. So if you click on, let's just click on English 1 real quick. You can quickly just see that's how you get to these unit overviews, and they're all very similar. So just increasing transparency in our district, and that was one thing that we heard loud and clear from our constituents that we want to do this year. So that's across the board. Then we can jump back.
Nice. That's it.
It's
Amazing.
It's been a
the
huge
big tabs
endeavor.
on there.
It's been a big task. Yeah, shout out to Megan Hoffmeister as a teacher at Sandpoint High School for really helping, and Angie Brass has been helping. She's my admin assistant. Everybody's been doing a great job with this. So then the next goal is, it really comes down to these individualized goals that we have for each student. Starting with ELA, we ask every school to set goals, ELA goals. These are 2 different examples. On the left is an SHS goal, and this is their English department. And they are tracking, if you notice, this is just tracking students' grades, how many students are getting what grade in each class. And that allows them to go by student, by skill, by standard, and really understand where their kids are at, so then they can call kids and students back in for reteaching and support. And so they know, I mean, they really have this grasp on how our students doing. The one on the right is an example of a goal that Lake Pend Oreille Alternative High School, they set out to create a writing rubric so that they could really, throughout all curriculums, throughout the content areas, really measure writing and understand, okay, this is what we're looking for in every content area. So there's consistency, so that when a student goes from one class to another, the writing is the same, and they know that they're helping each other out, and each teacher is supporting each other, which in turn, of course, helps students. Here's an example of our services for exceptional children, and this really what this is again our MAP scores, and you'll notice our services for exceptional children at Sandpoint High School has far exceeded the projected growth, which is pretty exciting, and far exceeded. I mean, they've done an excellent job of really helping students to grow. So I wanted to point that out, and that specifically in ELA. Here's an example of Sandpoint Middle School. Now, Sandpoint Middle School decided to use 2 different measures. One measure was the MAP, which we talked about, which you just saw one, just that graph. And in 7th grade, they used MAP for math. 7th and 8th grade. And in 7th grade, you'll notice we were shooting for 50%. They're pretty close. We've got a little bit of growth to make up. But in 8th grade, they're exceeding the projection, and they're exceeding what the goal is to hit 50% by the middle of the year, and they're at 53%. Now, on the flip side, we use those interim block assessments for our ELA students to measure growth. And you'll notice we have, it's around 200 and probably I think about 220 7th graders. But notice how many assessments have been taken. 1,087 assessments have been taken, which means that those teachers are utilizing these tests consistently and in high amounts. And if you'll notice, they utilize them as a pre-test and a post-test. And by the time they took the post-test, you'll see that 57% of students were at or near the standard, and then another 22% were above the standard. And in 8th grade, with over 1,200 assessments taken, by the time they took a post-test, the post-test in this, they were about 85% at least at or near standard or above, which is pretty phenomenal. So they're really getting a lot of experience and really taking it seriously on student growth, especially by standard. Right, we constantly are talking about this idea of learning gaps, especially with COVID, right, and students making up the learning that was lost during that time period. And one of the ways that we do that is through a program called IXL. And IXL is a math, we use it math specific, it also has an ELA component, but we specifically use it for math, and it allows students to practice specific math skills. While the teacher might pull other students and be helping them out, they can get students using this program to utilize these math skills to try to hit mastery. And if you'll notice, 3,491 skills have been practiced, 1,677 skills, students have reached proficiency on those skills, and then 414 skills mastered. And so this is an example of this idea of closing those learning gaps. All right, and then of course with secondary and with all school, behavior is always one of the major things that we are looking at. This is just an example at Clark Fork of measuring students and how they feel safe in a classroom. Now, notice 100% of the students, because red is actually proficiency and blue actually means mastery. So 100% of the students, 50 responses in their class, in this case, said that, hey, I feel really safe and I feel very respected with my teacher. Next one, and this is just, these are contact logs. One of the things that we've asked our schools to do is really look at if students are missing school, why are they missing it? Start to track those. On the right, you'll see this is one that Clark Fork uses to really record when a student misses that contact of, hey, we're calling the families, we're asking what's happening, and we're trying to get a rundown of what's taking place. On the left, that is just an example of Lake Ponderay High Schools. And then the last one here with behavior, this is at Sandpoint Middle School, and I love this. At Sandpoint Middle School, they're really focused on pretty much everything and wondering, okay, when do behaviors occur? You'll notice this graph here, and actually I brought this for this reason, but you'll notice these are full moons. And so I've been a middle school principal, and I know that actually full moons are a real thing, and that when you track full moons, kids' behavior goes up. And you'll notice they also, of course, use a turkey. They're measuring those holidays, what kids do around the holidays, and Christmas. And so when you're a middle school principal like I have been, those things matter, and you get prepared for those things because you know those are spikes. But this allows the school, and they've done an excellent job of tracking behavior and understanding when things occur, and then adjusting to that and understanding kids. One of their big goals this year at Sandpoint Middle School was to address a tardy issue that they felt was big. So they set at the beginning of the year a 98% on-time rate for students to be in class on time, ready to go. That's really high. Love that I can say that at mid-year, 99.84%. And on top of that, they actually lessened the time between classes by a minute. They went from 5 minutes to 4 minutes, which kind of blew my mind as an old middle school principal. I was like, oh, good luck with that. Well, they kind of blew it out of the water, which is exciting. So, and then our last slide. Our last slide, just some additional things. One of the things I wanted to point out was just PLCs, professional learning communities. We are very focused on that. It really provides a framework for professional learning, for making sure that students are getting what they need in every classroom.
To give thanks to our building principals, each of them gave a mid-year update on what's occurring in their buildings and highlighted not only these data successes but more. They're working hard to use real-time data to form flexible groups, catch kids' needs as we identify them. They talked about focusing not only on support or intervention, but also stretch and enrichment for high learners who need more. And just a thanks again for computer-based practice opportunities like IXL that allow us to kind of pinpoint student needs. So thank you for the opportunity. We're really proud of the teaching and learning that occurs in our district.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Questions?
Okay, so just give us a little reminder, the next time this sort of data assessment work gets done is toward the end of the year?
Yes and no. I mean, it's happening all the time. So
yeah,
we
that's
meet
true.
with the principals
monthly.
And we sit down and talk about just different goals that they have and the data that goes around that. Major testing occurs.
IRI for our kindergarten through third graders will be all of May.
Yep.
And the ISAT state testing window opens, and that typically occurs now at some secondary schools through April and May.
Yeah.
And so whatever the board's prerogative, we wanted to this year do the fall, show you the baseline data,
Yep.
what our goals were, mid-year, which is now, and then do an end of the year, which will come back again. We can certainly do, and again, you don't have to decide tonight, but we can certainly do an update monthly for you all next year, or the 3 times a year.
I think the 3 times a year is helpful, especially so that when we look at the one in June or whenever that last kind of summary would be, that we see that snapshot from fall, mid-year, and spring all next to each other, because although I think I remember things, I don't. But I appreciate how you did show us from fall to this mid-year period. So are there any other questions?
And just a reminder to the board that you can see this better on your board, and it also is available to the public. All of this data, if it was hard to see, is unavailable right after the meeting. It'll all be there, so people can look more intricately.
And those overviews are available for anybody to look
Yep,
at.
all of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am moving along. We have our superintendent report. Dr. Myers.
CDC. Good evening. Move this back so all the kids can fit. So thank you for letting me present. This is a March update. So the first thing I'd like to start with is the patron follow-up. So each month when we have public comments, when people come up at a board meeting, I want to be able to follow up with them and then report back to the board and the public if I followed up, so that the people know we're listening and following up with what they asked. So last time there was well, I'm going to skip to the library materials. There was a public comment about library materials, so I did meet with the patron, and I just wanted the board to know I still have some more research to do, but the intent, the public comments were about how are our library materials selected, how do we monitor them, and what's our current board policy. So I just wanted to say, one thing that I am working on, we have board policy 2500 that does have in, if there are concerns, that there is an avenue for parents or patrons if they have concerns through that board policy. But I did do follow-up. Our K-12 admin team, which means that's our principals and assistant principals at the schools, they do have a monthly meeting with what we call our library leads. You might call them librarians, but we don't have any certified librarians, so I call them library leads because they're leading the library. So our K-12 admin team is monthly meeting with them. They do review all of our purchase requisitions for any new materials coming in. And then one thing that I'm going to be working on is I want to make sure that we have an avenue for parents to be able to review what materials students are checking out, their own students, their own child. And so I'm looking into that right now. It's not an easy process. I did some research on that, and so I want to be able to make that cleaner for parents to be able to check and see what has my child checked out. So you can get that by requesting it by the library lead, but you can't go online and do that, so I'm looking into that right now just to see if that would be possible. I'm also going to be giving a periodical list for the libraries. We have the book list through Destiny, which is the program that has that. So I'm going to be doing some more follow-up, but I did meet with that patron, and I am following up with that piece. I think there was some definite issues that I think that we can address for more transparency and greater parent access to that.
Sure.
The other piece that I know some of you maybe realize is that we have had some parent concerns over the last couple of weeks of weather. Primarily some folks that wondered why we didn't have a snow day. And then also I had several student emails. They were all actually from Sandpoint High School. So I wanted the board to know I did go over to Sandpoint High School, and we had a group of several students, I think there was 14 or so, that I met with in person, explained the protocol, how the system, that there was a team that happened between 4 and 5, 4:45, hopefully the last decision's made. And I did explain that to them. They asked questions, so that was a good interaction with those students. There was a couple of students that maybe weren't as respectful in their communication, so I met with them independently and talked about that, because I feel one of our jobs as educators is that we are educating our students to have high employability when they graduate, and having respectful communication with anybody, whether it's a superintendent or a peer. Is everything online is traceable now, and we have Facebook, Instagram, they have Snapchat, all the things they're using are actually traceable and would be whether they're going to be employed or not. So I really thought that was a good life lesson to be able to follow up with that. And then sharing, did the video for the loop about how we make the decisions. Somebody did tell me that I was like Mary Poppins in the, yes. My voice goes up quite a bit when I'm on the video, which I'm like, well, that's just what happens. I'm sorry, but maybe Hollywood is not in my career phase for the next stage. But anyway, nonetheless, I'm trying to make it more personable and have an interaction with folks that way. And I did make quite a few connections about the weather concerns. All I can tell you is I had several parents thanking me for having school. I had several staff people email me, thank you. I know education's important. To actually have a snow day, we have to certify, I have to sign that there is an emergency closure. It cannot just be that we think it's a snow day, or as some of the students said they'd like to have a ski day, and we haven't had enough ski days yet this winter. But I do have to sign on the dotted line, as does the board chair, to certify that it's an actual emergency closure. So we do take it seriously, and I know that we can't make everyone happy, but I wanted you to know that I did do follow up with people for that. Okay, this will be familiar to you all, and if you've been coming to board meetings, you will know this is familiar. Looking what was the transition superintendent P of A? What were the goals for the year? So I'm just going to hit on these in this superintendent update. The first one is really getting familiar and becoming familiar and comfortable with the community and vice versa. So I'm having my first coffee clutch. Thank you to Ponderay Starbucks, where is our district office. They're going to be providing free coffee at Starbucks on March 22nd. So from 9:30 to 10:30, I will be meeting anyone who shows up and answering questions, following up if I need to. But anyone from the community is welcome to come. You're familiar with this as we've been working through the process. This is on the agenda tonight. We are to the very final board approval, hopefully, tonight with March 2023, and then we'll be able to publish this with a final draft in June so that it will start on July 1 for our next fiscal year, and it'll be a 5-year strategic plan. This is just a brief, to wet your whistle. This is a brief overview of what it would look like, the graphic, and we'll go into detail later on the agenda. But again, the 4 buckets that I presented last time with the facilities, student connection, quality staff, and community connection. An update with our district safety task force team. We are really getting down to the controlled access. We only have these 5 elementaries left. And if you remember our priorities, we started with because of the statistics, we started with high school level, then middle level, and then we went out to outlying schools for elementary and working our way in. So we're making progress, and you can see we have very few left to go. When I was at Sagal last week, they're installing on Thursday, so making progress. And then our Move, Secure, Defend training, we just finished. I made our last training at Sandpoint Middle School on March 1st. If anyone in the public or the board would like to see what does that training entail, I linked in the reference guide for you there, so you can certainly look at that. And I just want to remind the public that this was free of charge from the Idaho Office of School Safety. Mark Feddersen did provide this, and every staff went through this so they could talk about situational awareness at their school. So this was really helpful. I was there. It was over an hour-and-a-half training at Sandpoint Middle School on March 1st and asked a lot of great questions. And the staff can ask specifically about their situation at their school. So I think it was very helpful.
And this link through that you had for us to that quick reference guide is on the website also?
It will be in this.
It'll be in the packet.
Yeah, this packet. So this, after tonight, this is available on the website for everyone to access. The entire year, my reports from the very beginning in July to you are all accessed, as all of my superintendent updates each month are in there as well. So I did say that we were going to talk about unfinished learning gap, but I followed these 2 wonderful directors of teaching and learning, and so they just reviewed the multiple measures here of student performance data. So I'm just letting you know that these wonderful people did that piece for me. Thank you. I wanted to point out, looking at student performance, my favorite day of the year is student-led conferences. My goal, we've kind of started to plant some seeds with the staff. My goal is that we roll this up to the middle level next year and then keep rolling it up, so every year we add on until eventually K through 11 have student-led conferences, and then their senior projects, so that it'll be a complete non-student day where we have student-led conferences all day in our district. We did that in my last district, and it's wonderful. The research shows students who take accountability and ownership of their own learning, really that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where you see growth and the students really growing because they're taking ownership. And when they explain it to their parents, hopefully, I know you guys have been able to be through it, you've been able to, Pearlie,
Yeah.
you led them, and then did your kids go through it also?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we piloted it out there.
So, this
Yes.
is the attendance. We're gonna, there will be follow-up, so even if it's not 100%, these are just what came that day, but the teachers do follow up, and they have, for anyone who missed, so there's 100% by the time we're done with this, that parents do have this opportunity. I really do love this day. If you can see, I have just a couple of slides here. I went throughout the district and just kind of took pictures, sometimes without people knowing, just so I could see. But if you look at all three of these, what do you really see? What's the key that you see in all of these?
The kids.
Kids are at the middle.
They're leading it. And the funniest part was when they're having their parents do the math that they do nowadays, and the parents were like, oh, I mean, you could see a lot of, look at this, she's doing one here, there's several where they're trying to do the math, so that was funny.
Yeah.
It really is a highlight of our district, and I will tell you, this district led the way. In the last district I was at, we had trainers from this district, Hope Elementary, come down and train to start the process in that district. And now it's taking off, and another district down south is going to be doing it as well. So kudos to this district for starting years and years ago, when my oldest daughter was like in kindergarten at Washington. And the last one is obviously the communication. This is the last goal on my P of A. I put in the February loop, which we are not going to look at now because it has the Mary Poppins video in it. But there we go. Any questions from the board?
No. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to say that was the highlight of my years too.
Oh, good.
Was the
Thank you, Fred.
The student-led conferences, parents got more out of that than the parent-teacher conference.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate your report. Thank you. And is there anyone signed up for public comment? No, so we're going to move right on to the financial overview for our 2024 budget. And I believe you have, hello, Lisa, how are you?
Well, and
We have our Chief Finance and Operations Officer, Lisa Halls. Welcome.
Thank you. I need 1 minute to get set up.
No problem.
And
I will click it, Lisa.
I was looking behind me to see where you were sitting, and I just wasn't looking far enough. You were in this corner. Okay.
as I've explained over the last several board meetings, I need to juggle 2 pairs of classes to function now, which is a little embarrassing. Well, good evening.
Hello.
Tonight, we are going to give a very high-level overview for the fiscal year 2024 budget. So that means from July 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2024. And the presentation tonight and any other kind of budget workshop materials, we will have a section on our website starting tomorrow that you could reference or the public could reference. I do want to point out that I prepared these slides on March 10th, and today is March 14th, and you'll realize why that's salient as we move forward in the presentation. I also just want to recap what the board has heard from me in the last several months. In November, we reviewed our financial position for the prior fiscal year 22, and forecasted maybe some challenges moving forward and some of the financial strengths in our district. In the January board meeting, I reviewed the 6-month year-to-date for our current fiscal year, and then I also compared Superintendent Critchfield's to Governor Little's budget request for fiscal year 24. And so tonight the objective is to give you a projection on mostly state revenues for fiscal year 24 and how that positions us to balance our budget for fiscal year 24. So I want to start first with our unknown variables. So for fiscal year 24, we're getting closer to knowing what the state appropriation is. The Joint Finance Appropriation Committee, which is the committee tasked with setting all of the state's agency budgets, was supposed to hear the K-12 budget last Friday. That was delayed till yesterday, and then that was further delayed till this morning. We are the last agency budget for the state to be set, and the next steps are that the recommendation from JFAC would go to the House and the Senate. If that was approved, it would go to the governor for signature. There are years where the JFAC budget comes back to JFAC for one reason or another. I don't foresee that. Another unknown variable is our health insurance renewal, that we participate in the statewide insurance plan, and generally it is the second or third week in April that the premium increases are released. We are projecting a 10% increase, which aligns with the state of Idaho's increase of 10%. We do have a small we have an insurance committee that's met once and will meet again with our agent next week. We also, in the state of Idaho, teachers have bargaining rights, and the two negotiating teams have not started to meet. I believe they will start to meet even on a preliminary basis in next coming weeks in March, and then in a public meeting setting in April. The goal would be to ratify the teachers' negotiation agreement on the May 9th board meeting. Also an unknown variable is what is our student count? What is our enrollment going to look like next year? Overall, we're projecting a relatively flat enrollment in terms of the way that's stated in the state funding formula. That's called units. We have 196 units this year. That's what we projected. We are going to drop into what's called protected status next year, which would drop us to about 190 units, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment. We also have several large federal grants. The largest is our child nutrition program. Federal grant, the federal fiscal cycle is not concurrent with ours. It starts on October 1st. However, we do have from the federal level, for all the different grants, the federal appropriation in this case increases, and what we are waiting for are the State Department of Education to filter all that information down through Idaho. Idaho in general is realizing a lower poverty rate, so from a statewide perspective, less federal dollars are going to be flowing to Idaho for that reason alone. We will receive estimates in early May on the federal dollars, and we don't actually receive the final estimates until the final week in August. And then the legislation is not done. Their target is to adjourn on March 24th. There are other pending bills in the Idaho legislature that could either directly or indirectly impact our funding for fiscal year 24. Next slide. Then I want to transition to our known variables as of today. The first and foremost is that we have an indefinite term supplemental levy that went into effect. We are in our second year. It's a fixed amount of $12.7 million annually. I'm projecting that next year that will represent about 28% of our general fund revenue. I also want to take the liberty for the first time in my career to say that we are not running a supplemental levy today in March, just like many school districts. Today is a very big day for school districts to have JFAC meet and to be running supplemental levies today. The other known variables are that we have sweeping changes as to what was now called House Bill 1, which was a special session in September of 2022 that has allocated $330 million on an ongoing basis as dedicated funds for K-12 based on carving off sales tax. We also know that the temporary rule, and it's now the third temporary rule to pay school districts on enrollment, expires on, sorry, that's my typo, June 30th of 2023, apologize for that. JFAC approved the budget on average daily attendance this morning. So why is this so important? It's very important because of a provision. One, generally enrollment versus attendance, enrollment is about 5% higher than your attendance rates. Over these years now of COVID, that statistic, depending on the district, is not as solid. Our percentage is a little bit higher, but many districts are in sort of the 10% variance or even higher. There is something in the state funding formula called protection, which says from one fiscal year to the next, after the first 9 weeks of school, you're looking at your, I'm going to say student count. And if your student count drops by more than 3%, you're protected up to 97% of your unit count from the prior year. That's part of the protection provision. The other provision is that whatever the whole statewide shortfall is, that it's self-funded, all the districts will pay for that. And this is really important because now we're transitioning for the first time in Idaho's history from receiving state funding on enrollment, and it's going to be compared to average daily attendance. So not every district is going to fall into protection next year, but the big districts are, and they are the big unit counts. The other known variable is that our third and final ESSER package, ARPA, will be almost fully spent at the end of this current fiscal year. The exception to that are our HVAC projects that will be completed this summer of 2023. And over the last 3 fiscal cycles, we have supplanted millions of dollars into our ESSER funds. And now those salary and benefit dollars will shift back to our general fund as a general fund expense next year. Well over $2 million. Next slide. So this was my projection when I prepared these slides last Friday on what would happen when JFAC heard the K-12 budget. And luckily, they've come to fruition. Because actually these assumptions on my part were made January 31st, and we have been actively budgeting since then. There's been a lot of work, actually starting November 15th with all the departments having 2 months to prepare their request for the next fiscal year. And then we have a small budget committee that has met several times and has a recommendation to bring to our superintendent to balance our budget next year. So the first known variable, or what now is known, is that we will be in protection next year. That would be a loss of about $760,000. The really unknown variable, and we will not know that until February 15th of 2024, 11 months from now, is what the self-funded component will be. I'm estimating based on the calculation of comparing this year, fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 22, as if we were in the scenario now where we were being paid on attendance versus an enrollment. And that's where this self-funded portion of $650,000 comes in. It could be much higher. The second known variable is that there was an Office of Performance Evaluation study to look at how classified staff are compensated through the current funding formula. That was presented formally to both House Ed and Senate Ed. The primary finding was that for every dollar in fiscal year 22 that we received in state funding for classified staff, districts on average were paying out $1.59. Governor Little, in his budget request, and this was a result of that Office of Performance Evaluation study, that said they needed about $97.4 million to help remedy part of the formula. I'm going to say shortfall. Raising my voice like Mary Poppins, I guess, was to increase out of the dedicated funds this new, as a result of House Bill 1, and it's called the, I'm just blanking, the SIF, sorry, it will come back to me, that the base salary at the state level would be $37,285. It actually in appropriation today is $38,802, which is about a $900,000 increase in revenue to our district next year. The next thing that happened in JFAC this morning is that the teacher career allocation module has rungs on it, and every rung will receive a $6,359 increase, bringing the starting salary in Idaho, mandatory starting salary now as of July 1st, 2023 to $47,859. Just shy of $48,000. Our district's base salary right now is $44,000. This will cost out of dedicated funds from the newly established SIF as of House Bill 1, $145 million. It will bring into about $1.7 million in additional revenue, but it also will cost our district in order to implement the new base salary and to move our teachers down one rung almost the identical amount of money, $1.7 million. I would also share with you that our district's very unusual. Because our base salary is $44,000, many districts are lower than that. And because so many of our teachers fall on the third level, the advanced professional level, and also the top attainable rung that will move, this is a net gain. There are many districts that are struggling that this will be a net loss because they will now be required to pay the minimum salary of $47,859.
Right.
Next slide. Okay, our financial strategy that I feel like sort of a broken record remains completely unchanged. We have, over the last 3 years, supplanted our general fund salaries and salaries in our ESSER funds. Those will come back to the general fund next year. Our general fund reserves will be about $16.5 million at the end of this fiscal year. Then we will move forward in the upcoming fiscal years to spend down those reserves in order to maintain our flat $12.7 million indefinite term supplemental levy. The action item tonight is to adopt the strategic plan, and that the budget will adhere to the mission and vision of the strategic plan. And one of my since I started here, big goals is always to be absolutely as financially transparent as possible. Next slide. Okay, again, high level overview. This is pulled out of budget work with our small budget committee, and basically what that committee does is look at changes in revenues and changes in expenses from the current fiscal year, and in this case, what's the outcome? The outcome is that we need to cut about $1.7 million next year to balance. And just going through these quickly, I've discussed that the supplanting of staff from ESSER dollars will come back to the general fund. We anticipate a state increase of about $3.8 million, offset by, this would be our protection, and I'm recommending that the self-funding protection, which would be a one-time incident in Idaho, come out of our reserves. Then there are changes to the PERSI categories next year. The Public Retirement of Idaho is adding a new category for teachers, SROs, and bus drivers, and there will be a rate increase on both the employer side and the employee side. That'll cost us about $84,000. We've also had all of our department heads submit their requests for next year. That's about a additional cost of about $1.3 million. I've mentioned a projected 10% increase in health insurance, and then the compensation increase to meet the new teacher minimum salary, inflation, and other market factors will be about $3 million. So that's where the $1.6 million cut comes from. And next slide, final slide. So what are the next steps? In our April board meeting, the superintendent and myself as technical backup will present to the board a draft budget for fiscal year 24. If there are a lot of questions, a second board meeting could be necessary in April. In the May meeting, we hope to ratify the teachers' negotiated agreement, and typically that also, although it's not an action item, means that all the 3 other salary matrices in our district would be approved. And then the June board meeting would be the budget hearing and adoption. Are there any questions?
Are there any other questions from the board? No.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
And we are going to move on, and I will hear a motion for consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes, and we will move on to some of these board action items. And the first one is the offsite prom request from Clark Board. Do we have the students here to present to us? Excellent. We seem to hear every year from a group of students, so we welcome you.
All right, I'm going to start it just by introducing Ron Mason. He is this group's advisor. I'm going to let these guys take over.
Okay.
My name's Ethan Howard. Chase. We would like to have prom at the old lighthouse in Hope. We chose that place because a community member had offered to let us use it for free.
We're having it on May 6th, and we have raised over $3,000 for this prom event.
Any questions?
I have a quick question. Have you held it at this location before?
We have not.
Yes, we have.
Not in their memory.
Not in recent memory, but long time ago, yes.
Yes. Okay, well, that's great. Are there any other questions from the board?
I just like how it's a little bit closer to home.
Yeah,
that's
it is.
That's my
I will
reason.
say that place has some history for me. My
Yes.
wedding reception was there.
Oh, Hurley's gonna want to go and
Did you get
dance.
it for free?
Yeah.
My mom worked for him.
All right.
I appreciate this board has always been very accepting of the proposals that come forward from your group, and I will hear a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the 2022-2023 Clark Fork High School prom be held off-site at the old lighthouse on May 6th.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Are there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. That was fairly painless, right, guys? Thank you. Good luck at your prom. Be
Have
safe.
fun. Be careful.
Yep. And we will move on to the request to bid. I think that we have James Kaler here from Transportation. Our Transportation Director will present on this. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So
Yeah.
typically we would request to go to bid in the summer. This year we're looking at doing it earlier because the build times for new buses went from about 4 months to a year.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of asking now in March. We'd like to buy 3 new 71 passenger type C school buses. And I'm asking for your approval.
So this is the request bid. So is there any other questions for James? In that case, I will hear a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the request to go to bid for 3 new school buses.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I feel like every month you stall on this, the price goes up.
It does.
Okay. Next order of business, and I'm already, let's see, Sandpoint High School roofing proposal from Facilities Director, Lisa Halls.
Different hat.
I'm not going to try to regurgitate what Mr. Deal has prepared, except to say that there is the midsection of the Sandpoint High School roof that has surpassed its useful life and needs to be replaced. Lake Pend School District has been working with Jimmy's Roofing not only on this roof, but district-wide, almost a year, starting in March of 22, evaluating all of the district's roof. The goal here of completion date would be the summer of 23. The cost would be just under $98,000, and that would come out of our plant fund, reminding the board that several years ago we started transferring $200,000 a year into a plant fund for this type of need.
Yeah. Just off the top of your head, do you know what that will leave in the plant fund?
Well, we spent almost $100,000 on another roof. I'm going to think at the year end it'll be about $300,000
Still
left.
Okay.
But I do have a roof joke.
Oh,
And I'm not somebody that tells jokes.
I was like,
Let
this
alone
is the
public.
first. Okay.
But I was at an IASBA, an Idaho Association of School Business Officials conference last week, and someone led with how much does a roof cost? And then they said nothing, it's on the house.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay.
This one, however, cost $98,000.
Yes, this is a different one. Are there any other questions for our Finance Officer, Lisa Halls? Then I will entertain a motion for this.
I make a motion to accept Omnia Certified Proposal R180902 from Jimmy's Roofing for the re-roofing of the midsection at Sandpoint High School.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That motion passes. And we're going to turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Meyer for our 5-year strategic plan.
Point of reference, you skipped an item, resolution 2303, late start for Northside.
after.
Oh, is it?
Yep.
I skipped it, never mind.
I have it
Sorry.
after.
I still have tears in my eyes from laughing at Lisa's joke.
Oh, there you go. That was it. We lost track of things. Thank goodness. I thought it was me. Okay, so we're on the. Hello.
So, Kristen Hawkins, I will remind you, the Community Relations Liaison funded by Kate, and she's supposed to work half-time. So, this is actually in a different program, so I won't, Kelly, you're going to have to go through it. I can't click it. So, we wanted to point out a couple of things. We were hoping that the board asks questions. We did the draft last month, and I didn't get any follow-up, so I'm hoping that means that the board really loves it. We've done a few revisions, so we'd like to go through it with you.
Okay.
After going through the entire process, really what's come out as our mission for the district is students at the center of all we do. So looking at the funneling, after we've got, remember, 994 people, parents, students, staff, community members that gave feedback, really when it's been synthesized and funneled, it really comes down to this. And I don't have the fancy thing like Casey had, but This right here, the center of everything we do comes to students. So this, thank you to Kristen for designing this. These are the 4 buckets that we presented on last time. Facilities, quality staff, student connection, community connection. And I don't know how people normally read it, but it was facilities was the most, and then student connection, quality staff, community. So I don't know if you go this way or around, however people read, usually right to left, so kind of across and down is how I read it. So we're going to go through the pages on these, but that's the overview so that folks, when they're just seeing what are you doing for the next 5 years, what are your goals, and of course, board directed by law, this is the overview page.
And on this page, just to add, under facilities, you'll see 2 objectives, and under student connection, 2 objectives. The next pages will show what the deliverables are for each of those objectives.
Perfect.
So the first one, it ended up being, when you talked to Trustee Board Chair Lewis last time about what are the priorities, when we went through and itemized and prioritized, this is the priorities they went in on the way that we're going to go through it right now, based on the public, parent, staff, and community feedback. So the first one here, I will remind the board that the reason we did deliverables is because the new superintendent Critchfield for the state of Idaho, it used the word deliverables, and it really resonated with our folks as like, this is what we want to deliver, and each year we'll be working towards these 5-year goals. And then, as I reminded the board, every year we'll come back to update it and give you a brief overview, gain community participation, and update every year so that we'll have a 5-year rolling strategic plan. We'll continually be looking 5 years in advance. So, these deliverables that we have for school safety, I'm going to do the first one and then you could do the second one, is maintain active district safety task force. When I say deliverables, this means every one of these will be measured and can be updated to you on how we can measure that we're reaching towards the school. Prioritize the recommended improvements in our annual vulnerability assessments. Those are not public, and I remind people the reason why we didn't link those in is because those are a safety. We don't share those. The board has to go into executive session to actually look at those.
Yep.
Hire a campus security armed guard. The reason there's a parentheses S is because that will be budget dependent. But in my wanting for next year in a budget, I do want to add an armed guard so that Clark Fork High School has that, and I've shared that with the board several months in a row. And then implement the one trusted adult, which has to do with protective factors and figuring out a relationship for students with one trusted adult at the school, which creates, you'll see it also comes down into the improving student connections as well.
Next on the list is address deficient and unsafe building conditions, and this can be achieved through initiating long-range facility planning committee and prioritizing facility needs.
And with the approval of the strategic plan, the board will be allowing me to start a long-range facility plan because that will be a subcommittee of the board.
Right.
And having been in this before, it is usually a 1 to 2 year process for that to undertake.
Sorry.
Wanted to go for it. The next important one was improve student connections. And our first is improve academic engagement. This has to do with CTE offerings, elective opportunities, flexibility in our student schedules. As I shared, Clark Fork High School will be doing a self-directed learning plan for all students, and they are piloting that next year, diving in, and that'll be coming to the board later. We've shared quite a bit with you so far. Looking at internships and job shadows for our students, and this came up quite a bit in the feedback from the patrons and the community, making sure that our state standards that we teach our alignment with the curriculum is unbiased, and that we make sure that it's fair and unbalanced and that it aligns with the curriculum. You could see tonight that Mr. McLaughlin put an example of that, and we are almost done having all of those updated on our website. So we're going along well with that. And then with looking at the dyslexia legislation, and for those Trustee Williams and Sherman that were yesterday watched that presentation at the Kiwanis Club, and really how we're ahead of the state and other districts in what we're doing in going above and beyond what the state requires for that legislation. And this is expanding literacy, not only with that legislation, but also K-12.
Next, we have cultivate student well-being. This can be achieved through assisting students in identifying protective factors for increased resiliency, which is a lot of words, but this is something that Dr. Meyer is super passionate about, and that came up time and time again from the administration about having students be able to figure out what are those protective factors. And if you Google protective factors, there's a list of them that you can find, so that they can increase resiliency, so that they can have grit and sustain hardships in their education and life. Build climate and connection between students, peers, and staff, and partner with parents to improve student attendance.
So the third one, recruit and retain quality staff. One thing based on Trustee Sherman's feedback last time, we just had retain, but there really was an element of recruiting, HR experience. So we went back and looked at feedback, and really that was part of the feedback. So we put that word in there afterwards. And the first thing is to boost job satisfaction. And that doesn't mean that our job satisfaction is low, but as I shared in looking at feedback, it is just a different, and anyone who is in the classroom after post-COVID, after the COVID before, it is just a different environment. And there was some silos created from necessity of social distancing and masks and people learning at home and in and out of quarantine. So there was just inherent in what happened. We really feel like the feedback from these surveys were we want to make sure and continue to boost job satisfaction, which goes here in, Lisa Halls, the CFO, talked about competitive salary benefits. Having a wellness program, we want to be able to provide that for our staff. We do have EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but how do we also look at nutrition, health, and help our staff really take care of each other and themselves? That's near and dear to my heart, and I think that fits right in with what we have as feedback from the community and our staff. Foster cohesion across the district so that we don't have those silos. We have grade level teams, content teams. They're talking about what they're teaching. They're also building relationships with each other, and we create that fostering, that whole connection again. And then this is near and dear to our voters, which is why they did pass the indefinite term levy, is they want to have reasonable class sizes. It came up over and over again, is that's why people want to live here, and it's really important.
Next is provide robust and relevant professional development. We want to meet teachers where they are with our students where they are, so that means continuing professional learning communities and having job-specific training across classified and certified employees. Addressing unfinished learning gaps. This is a long-range goal. And then support staff to meet evolving student behavioral needs. We've talked about it before in board meetings, but the behavior issues have been on the rise after COVID. And so this is being achieved in part through PBIS right now, but we'll have, under each of the deliverables, we'll have a plan of action for you eventually.
And the last one is foster community connection. So the first one is to communicate effectively and just continue to have a lot of varied ways of communicating and making sure that we're consistent with that with the community.
And we want to partner with parents. We want to increase parent engagement and volunteer opportunities offered at all schools. I'm happy to report I was a little late to the board meeting tonight because there's a parent engagement and student engagement STEAM night happening right now at Forum in Sidwell. You would have thought there was a soccer tournament going on. I had to walk quite a ways to get in, and I was there right on time. So it's so cool to see the schools filled with parents and kids again. And then at Sandpoint High School, same thing, high attendance this evening.
So, and our last one is building community partnerships, and so really partnering with businesses and nonprofits. We want to be able to say that we're partnering with them in the community now, and I know we keep saying that post-COVID, but there really has been a difference in the way we operate pre and post, and now we want to make sure we build those relationships and partner again. And then also one thing we really saw a lot of, and some districts I know put this into the senior project of a required number of hours that you have that students do in the community for volunteer work, partnering. And so I'd like to make sure that that's happening. And we did see that a lot in our feedback, creating opportunities for students to be out in the community and helping to give back. Okay, and as Kristen said, each of these then underneath the deliverables would have a plan of action that we as a district and principals at their building, directors in their departments would have. This is how they're going to help assist that. So we all have that all, who's doing what by when measured. Plan of action under each one of these deliverables.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the details that have been presented? Thank you for the really thorough overview, and it's on the website for anybody who wants to print it out and put it on their refrigerator. That's what I'm gonna do.
This isn't yet, but you can plaster it all over your refrigerator after tonight.
That's right, after tonight. Yeah. I will hear a motion though. Right here it is. I'll make a
There we
motion
go.
to adopt the 5.
I make a motion to adopt the 5-year strategic plan as presented.
Second.
It's moved in second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes.
Did it.
Good job on just a whole lot of work. This is the culmination of
Yeah.
months
It
and
has been a
months.
lot.
I know.
Thank you to everyone in the community that gave and came to all of the community partnership meetings,
Yeah.
input, feedback, and such. So thank you.
Yep, that's awesome. Now I will go on with Resolution 2303, late start.
Do you want to just dive right into it?
Yeah, we just need to get a motion.
Here.
Make a motion.
I make a motion. No.
Here, you want to read mine?
I make
There
a
we
motion
go.
to adopt resolution 2303.
It's moved. Is there a second? Go.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
You
I already signed it.
That motion passes. And I'm moving straight on. We have some second readings of policies. These obviously with second reading are, by the very nature, we've already reviewed them and some revisions have been made. Is there, we're going to look at the first one, which is 4105, the public participation at board meetings. And in your packets, the highlighted portion is the revised portion that was discussed. Are there any questions on the revisions as they've been documented for us here? Including that capital B. If there are no questions on that, I'll hear a motion to approve that.
Anybody?
If you can find it.
I make a motion to adopt the revisions to policy 4105, public participation at board meetings as presented.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The second one is policy 4140, visitors to and conduct on school property. And as you remember, we have reviewed that as well.
Yeah, the revisions are bolded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Board.
Any discussion on that? So I will hear a motion on that one.
I make a motion to adopt the revisions to policy 4140, visitors to and conduct on school property as presented.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we will have a policy 4300, conduct on school property, and that one is one to be removed. If you recall, we looked over that. It's included in the other one, so this one's being removed, so I'll hear a motion for that.
I make a motion to remove policy 4300, conduct on school property, from the LPOSD policy manual.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. We do have a first reading of a policy, which is policy 5328, employee use of social media technology and electronic communications, including personal sites. So,
Yeah, mine wasn't open.
I'm having trouble
well.
opening that one.
I put it up here too.
Oh, yeah, okay, there we go. Got it down here.
I know, I don't know why I can't. Oh, here, no, it's showing, no, it's showing. Okay, so, do you have anyone presenting this, or we're just gonna read it?
Yep, I can present it. Just wanting to make sure that we're clearly delineated if people have personal accounts and if people have professional accounts, and wanting to make sure that it's delineated between the two. And overriding is our concern with safety and making sure that we aren't sharing student things on professional accounts without permission, and that we have a clear delineation between personal and private is the intent on the updates. So highlighted in yellow here, and then I just took out this examples of social media that changes so often.
Because
we
it's
don't
always
need,
lacking
yeah,
some.
so we
Yeah.
don't need to have that in there, was my feeling.
Yeah.
That's why I took that out.
No, I agree. It just limits the new stuff that's out there. Did anyone have any questions on what you read here, the additional pieces that were added? And if you had looked at the bottom, that was last reviewed in September 2020, last revised. So it's not, this one never gets old because it's constantly changing. So it's just a fresh look at it and a few additions.
And with the board's permission, with any feedback you have, but I would also like to send this out to staff, because this is, employee use, and so the board has asked me to go out and get feedback on policies that affect the different groups of people. So I would like to be able to send this out before you, to the staff for feedback before you have your next reading.
Before we have our second reading.
And then I will send you that feedback before we get to the next meeting. If
I
that's
would
okay.
be comfortable with that, and even if it causes a second round of discussion because of anything that emerges, it's not a crisis point if we look at it once and then review it again.
And just to clarify, just so everyone knows, the reason I wait is because I don't want to send something out before the board has a first review, because you might say, no, I don't want that. So I don't want to do that without first bringing it to you. That's why the delay of the one meeting.
That's totally fine, and there may not be a need to delay based on staff review of this policy. There is no action required on a first reading, but I will move on to any administrative announcements that we might have. Who is here who might need to? Nothing.
I'll make a report. We just completed our alumni tournament. We do it annually, and I've been doing this for 19 years, and this is by far if you want to use the word humongous, it was huge this year. We had probably 400 people floating through that gym.
Oh, wow.
A couple 16-hour days, and so it's long, but I'll tell you, it's amazing when you see kids who graduated from that school 19 years ago coming back with their own kids that are like yay big now.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing, and hearing the stories from people who have traveled the world and who are doing this really cool things. It's an awesome event. It's one of the things that's kind of special about Clark Fork. They don't really have class reunions, but they have an alumni tournament where everybody comes back together.
That's
and
pretty cool.
It's amazing. It's a great time had by all, and this is the biggest one I think that we've ever had. So it was a great weekend. On top of that, we are in the process right now of starting our junior planning meetings, and so my counselor and my librarian works really close with our seniors and stuff. They're talking about their senior year and their post-secondary plans, and so it's kind of a cool deal also where the parents and the kids come together and talk about what life's going to look like their senior year and what their plans are for their future. So.
Great.
I'd like to add something to Clark Fork. a Clarkport graduate who is a sophomore at the University of Idaho, has been selected to study the film industry in Prague, Czech Republic this summer.
Whoa. Nice.
Whoa.
Our granddaughter.
Oh, yeah. Your granddaughter. I was like, how'd you know?
Yeah.
That's exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, what a great opportunity.
Graduate of Clarkport.
That's right.
Awesome.
Nothing from TJ. So then,
I wanted to thank yesterday we had a presentation on our dyslexia program. It was at the Kiwanis Club that Tanya and I were able to go to with Dr. Meyer and Casey and Andra and Kelly, and it was phenomenal. It was really, really cool and very moving, and I think that the more we can get those type of stories out there and educate the people about everybody about what we're doing that is really changing lives, like absolutely changing lives, and it's like it's amazing. It is absolutely incredible, and I want to, huge kudos to the entire team that makes all that happen. I know there's, you guys are all juggling 15 basketballs at once, and just home run all the way. So really cool.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
we're sorry those of us who had to miss it. Sorry. Thank you for bringing that forward.
Yeah.
So at this time, gosh, if you don't turn around very often, the crowd has thinned out. Thank you to the ones who stuck it out there. I will hear a motion to move into executive session.
All right. I make a motion to move into executive session. Executive session as provided for in Idaho Code Title 74, Section 206, subsection 1B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, or public school student. To communicate with legal counsel for the public agency to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated. The mere presence of legal counsel at an executive session does not satisfy this requirement.
Second.
Seconded, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Trustee Sherman.
Yes.
Trustee Decker.
Aye.
Trustee Williams.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Thank you. We are moving into executive
I want to
session.
say present.